Welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My name is Alice Li Hagan. Rim of the Pacific exercise, or RIMPAC, the world's largest international maritime exercise, is wrapping up as ships started returning to Pearl Harbor since Wednesday. This is the 24th exercise since it began in 1971. Today with us, we have Jim Nueman and Lieutenant Commander Robert Franklin, and they are going to talk about RIMPAC, its benefit to Hawaii, how it fosters international collaboration, and how through this RIMPAC exercise, the Navy is advancing its innovative energy strategy. Let me introduce Jim first. Jim is with Public Affairs of Navy Region Hawaii, and he's also doubling up as the first historian. And Commander Franklin, he is the lead action officer with the Task Force Energy and Environment. I got it right?
That's right.
Okay, well, welcome, gentlemen. And first of all, thank you for your service to the country.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Producer, may I ask you to show the first image, please? Okay, I found this on the RIMPAC2014 RIMPAC Facebook page, and I think it best summarizes how big this exercise is. One of you gentlemen, would you like to give us an overview of what RIMPAC involves?
Sure. Well, RIMPAC, as you said, it's the 24th RIMPAC exercise. You can see this year, 2014, we have 22 nations, over 47 ships.
Can I have the image back, please?
We have over 200 aircraft, which equates to 25,000 personnel that are here in Hawaii for this exercise. The first Rim of the Pacific exercise was in 1971. It was an annual event until 1974, and interestingly, it was the United States, Australia, and Canada, plus the UK and New Zealand who were the first RIMPAC. Australia, the United States, and Canada have been in every RIMPAC since then. But obviously it's grown over the years. 74, it became a biannual event because it grew and more nations got involved.
Tell us who are the new participants for this year.
This year, China is participating actively for the first time, and also the nation of Brunei is involved actively as well. So every year, usually you're going to have some new participants in the event. The theme this year is capable adaptive partnerships, and really the Rim of the Pacific exercise, it's a unique training opportunity for nations, national exercise of the Pacific Rim nations, because a lot of the issues that they're dealing with, all of the nations in the Rim of the Pacific are very common issues, very common interests.
Jim, why don't you hold your thought, and Mr. Producer, can you roll the first video, please?
Forget the exact title for it, but it kind of looks like a horse or a mule or something that the Marines are testing for their operations. This kind of shows you how RIMPAC is a very varied exercise. It's a maritime exercise, but it involves land forces, it involves sea forces, and not just land, air, and sea forces for the United States, but land, air, and sea forces for the nations around the Rim of the Pacific.
It's fascinating. I was telling Commander Franklin earlier on before the show that I got interested in RIMPAC 2 years ago when we heard about the Russian ship coming. So we went aboard, and then, of course, now that I'm hosting this, I said I have to interview somebody to talk about this exercise. So tell us what is unique about the 2014 exercise then.
Well, for the 2014 exercise, one of the really unique things about that is There's a real emphasis this year on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. So the Mercy, the hospital ship, USNS Mercy.
The one that we saw last on the video.
Actually, the one that we saw last on the video was the Peace Ark, because the Chinese are involved in the in the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief for this year, which is a great thing. But that is more of an emphasis this year than it has been in past exercises, and so the Mercy is involved and the Peace Ark are involved in humanitarian assistance. So that's one really important thing that we want to emphasize. And also this year there's more of an emphasis on energy and environment, which the Lieutenant Commander is going to talk about, the TFEE, but just the sustainability and learning to use our energy resources in a sustainable way. So those are two really key emphases that are unique to this year's event, including what you've already mentioned, a couple of the nations that are involved that weren't involved in the past.
Well, I know that the ships are they're still probably returning to Pearl Harbor, and tomorrow really wraps up the whole exercise.
Right.
So what are some of the impacts and achievements that you feel that this exercise has accomplished?
Well, again, it's kind of what you hope to achieve in any RIMPAC exercise. You've got, all of the interests that we're dealing with in the RIMPAC exercises are really are multinational interests. Like I said, humanitarian assistance, anti-piracy operations, just keeping the sea lanes open for all the nations of the Pacific to use. Particularly, we're talking about the rim of the Pacific. So the scale of this one with the 22 nations and the 25,000 personnel, all we've gotten is very positive feedback from other nations and our own forces as well, that we're really learning how to operate as a team, developing those relationships, which is really what RIMPAC is about. It's about, hey, we've all got common interests. Let's learn to work together. Let's learn, we've got many of the same objectives, but perhaps we have different ways that we go about doing things, different terminology. So the achievement really is, what every RIMPAC seems to be, is just a greater sense of cohesiveness and a greater sense of partnership and friendship that develops in something of this scale.
Any feedback from Brunei, since you said that this is their first time participating in the exercise? No
specific feedback from Brunei that I'm aware of, but there is a lot of feedback that comes back. I've heard from, I've seen specifically comments from the Japanese, comments from Denmark, who's involved, from Australia, but no, I can't say I've specifically seen anything from Brunei.
Can you share the feedback that you've received from the Australians or some other feedback? Well,
yeah, and it's very, very, it's funny when you read the feedback. What's great about it is you see that it's a very common theme. What you find happening in something like this is, you've got this large-scale exercise with these exercise scenarios that have been worked out. But what you find is that relationships are developed. And so those relationships are going to come into play later on. This exercise isn't just to have an exercise in and of itself. It's for the future. So in the future, when we have some kind of crisis with a typhoon or something like that, you have a personal relationship with these other nations from captain to captain, where it's not you're coming at this situation in the future cold, but hey, we've had a relationship already. We went through this exercise in RIMPAC in 2014, and now we can work together. So pretty much when you read the comments of the different nations, including our own, it's always, I learned a lot from these other nations. We have common objectives, but again, maybe different ways of doing things. And hey, maybe I can learn something from this nation or from the way that they do it that I didn't know before. And hopefully the United States can take a lead in providing some of those training tactics or whatever, some of those operational tactics that other nations can use in future real world situations.
And one of the reasons I think that this RIMPAC has been so successful is not only are we building a foundation to continue to work together with our partner nations in the future through our shared experiences during this RIMPAC, but our leaders during this RIMPAC, a lot of them have worked together in the Middle East and in the Western Pacific before. So they're able to build upon an existing foundation of trust and knowledge of each other and how they operate to jump right in and hit the ground running in this RIMPAC and make it really successful.
That's good to know, especially I was also trying to read some logs by different servicemen. I think it was from Australia. He said that, yes, you can have technology and do this exercise, but he said at the end, the key to interoperability is relationship.
Right.
So,
and interoperability is a key word in what we're talking about here. Making those different systems mesh together, not just we're not just talking about mechanical systems, but just the way that different services in different nations do things, learning the best practices from each, so that in the future we can work together in a real world situation.
see, when we, from a civilian's point of view, when we see all these exercises, it's got to do with aircraft technology, but really at the end, it's how the people use all these technology to make things work, put things together.
Right.
Now, how was this exercise conceived? How did it start in 1971?
Well, that goes back a bit in time.
And that goes to your historian background.
I mean,
You're
after
wearing a
World War
historian.
II, security in the Pacific was really, on the United States. But as time went on, it's a big ocean, and 70% of the globe is water, and a lot of that is the Pacific. 90% of any nation's trade is happening over the water. So every nation has an interest in keeping those sea lanes open and keeping the trade flowing and keeping the interaction going. And over time, other nations wanted to become more involved in their security, and not just their security, but security for the region. Because security for the region means security for everybody, so that you can get the goods flowing and so forth, and in cases where any particular nation needs assistance because of a humanitarian, like I said, any kind of natural disaster or something. So more nations became more interested in being involved in that process, and that's where RIMPAC was conceived. The United States took a leadership role, of course, because of our role after World War II, but absolutely, let's get the other nations involved. Let's make this a partnership, because it's a big place. The ocean is a big place. The Pacific is a big place. We want to involve the other nations in the Pacific Rim in that process. Security and keeping it safe and keeping those sea lanes open. So it's just something that evolved over time. When I don't want to say we realized that the Pacific is a big place. Obviously, we already knew that, but other nations wanted to become more involved in the region and keeping the region open.
Now, you talked about how the exercise has evolved over the years already, but earlier on, Commander Franklin, you said that a lot of the leaders have worked together already. So can you tell us more? How are these executives, these leaders, doing things together for this RIMPAC exercise this year?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, my boss has personal experience in the Middle East working with some of the senior leaders, and it's great seeing them around the table every morning, building on past experiences. I know for me personally, on a smaller scale, there's a couple of ships here in the harbor for RIMPAC right now that I was working with earlier this year when I was on deployment on one of our ships in the Western Pacific. So it was great to see them and be hosted in their country just a few months ago, and now we've got the chance to host them and work together on our soil in a different context. But it's great to build on a pre-existing relationship and just advance the ball further down the field.
That's great, and I know that tomorrow's the reception, so do you know what's going to be happening at the reception? How you, or I guess how all the different countries wrapping up the exercise?
Yeah, it'll just be, there'll be speakers just kind of wrapping it up and, saying what a success it was and how we look forward to the next one that comes up. Because I think that's important to point out what Lieutenant Commander was saying. as you already know, the Rim of the Pacific exercise is not a one-time thing. It's one in a series of 24. So you're always hoping to build on that. And I think what you're going to see at that reception tomorrow is just a reiteration of that and a strengthening of that. That this was a successful exercise, that we've become closer friends, that we've learned more and more about interoperability, like you said, and then another key word is cohesiveness. You know, that we've learned from the past exercises that we've instituted into this one, and that we hope to take the lessons learned from this one and institute those in future RIMPAC exercises.
That's great. Well, let's take a break,
Okay.
and when we come back, we will talk more about your area, which is in the energy and environment. My guests here are Jim Nueman, the Public Affairs Officer at Navy Region Hawaii, and Lieutenant Commander Franklin. He is the Lead Action Officer with the TFEE. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Aloha, this is Keli'i Akina. It's my privilege to be the host of Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. Ehana Kako, what does that mean? Well, many people have heard of Epule Kako, let's pray together. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Let's work together to build a better economy, government, and society. And every week, Monday from 2 to 3 o'clock, you will see movers and shakers and other people who are working together to build a better economy, government, and society. Again, I'm Keli'i Akina on the Ehana Kako weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. Aloha. See you here Mondays 2 to 3.
Welcome back to ThinkTech Hawaii BizEd Spotlight. My name is Alice Li Hagan. With me today are two of my guests, Jim Nueman from Navy Region Hawaii. He's the historian and the Public Affairs Officer, as well as Lieutenant Commander Franklin. He is the Lead Action Officer with the U.S. Navy Task Force for Energy and Environment. So earlier on, we talked about the history of RIMPAC and what is unique about this year's exercise. Now, Lieutenant Commander, I'd like to turn to you to talk about the Task Force Energy and Environment. Maybe before I begin, let's show a very quick video that I found. Maybe that will kind of set our tone for our questions. Mr. Producer, could you roll the second video?
Welcome to All Hands Update. I'm Petty Officer Tyrell Morris. The Navy values energy as a strategic resource, and energy security is important to our mission readiness. Task Force Energy and Environment is doing its part to conserve energy during Rim of the Pacific, or RIMPAC Exercise 2014. Renewable energy sources were the only source of power for the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief portion of RIMPAC. Solar panels, windmills, and hydrogen power sources were used to provide power for more than 250 personnel for 2 weeks. Energy conservation and security support SECNAV's energy goals, leading to the sale of the Great Green Fleet of 2016. Investing in environment-friendly technologies will decrease our dependency on fossil fuels and deliver sufficient energy to meet warfighting and installation needs.
Okay, Commander Franklin, tell us what we saw on the video there and where it took place.
All right, well, what you saw in the video is one of the more tangible aspects of what Task Force Energy and Environment, or TFE, did during this RIMPAC exercise. What you saw there was the Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Recovery Camp. That's a series of 45 tents where 400 sailors lived and worked. It's where they lived, it's where they ate, it's where they got medical care and did all of their administrative work. And what we did is we took those 45 tents, we pieced together 11 different renewable energy systems, and we were the sole source of power for that entire part of the camp at Fort Island during RIMPAC. Now, TFE, in a broader sense, we came together in the late spring. We were challenged by, the RIMPAC commanders were challenged by Navy leadership to connect RIMPAC to the overall Navy energy strategy, using RIMPAC to tell the greater Navy energy story. What are we trying to do with energy? And in general, what we're trying to do is just change our approach and our philosophy about energy consumption with the goal of increasing operational capability and flexibility while decreasing our vulnerabilities.
So this is a new initiative then. Did you implement anything like that for the 2012 exercise?
This is the first time that energy has really been a mission for RIMPAC, and my boss actually had a seat at the table at the senior leadership group, and he got to brief the RIMPAC commander on the status of our energy initiatives and the energy consumption that we were able to measure during RIMPAC. That was another RIMPAC first. We focused on the ships, but this is the first time that energy consumption has been accurately measured and very closely tracked during the exercise. So we were able to build on some of the initiatives from 2012. I think we're all familiar with the biofuels, or sometimes called drop-in replacement fuels, that were used in some of the ships and aircraft. And here in 2014, we took some renewable sources, used them in new ways or in a new context, and are trying to develop processes and procedures that will be able to use to advance the greater Navy energy goals of deploying the Great Green Fleet in 2016.
Now, so since you're wrapping up with the whole exercise, so how successful do you think the initiative has been, especially what you did on Fort Island with all the renewable energy usage?
Well, I think we would consider it very successful. If our team had not gone out to Fort Island, that camp either would not have had power at all, or they would have been relying on noisy generators and having to be refueled constantly and things like that. So that was a huge success.
And tell us about, you were telling me about some feedback you got back from the servicemen about using generator, but this time around it's different. Do you want to talk about that?
That was a great story about that. So if we back it up to the spring and we're thinking about what are some things we can do, what are some projects that we can do with Task Force Energy, our team went out and talked to sailors, and some of them would tell us, every time I come out to Fort Island for RIMPAC, I always end up in a tent. And I don't mind living in a tent, but I always seem to be next to the generator, and it's loud, and it's hard to work and sleep and concentrate and do what I need to do out there. And so we partnered with a variety of organizations. The Army Corps of Engineers, a couple of their groups, Hawaii Electric Company provided some technology for us. They provided some solar trailers, some civilian science and technology advisors at U.S. Pacific Command and U.S. Army Forces Pacific, and some civil engineers in the Navy at Navy Facilities Engineering Command. All came together with people and technology and pieced it together and came up with a way to provide power to this camp. And all the feedback we got was it was absolutely great. The camp was quiet, it was peaceful, it was easy to sleep and live and get work done. So ashore we had a great demonstration. We also took some of that technology after the humanitarian assistance and disaster recovery demonstration was done, and we moved it to the backside of Fort Island. So it wasn't quite as public right there off the airstrip like you saw in the video. But what we did is we said, let's take this technology that's doing logistics support functions and move it into a more forward operating context. So we had well, what we had is we had a group of Navy reservists from California with some 34-foot harbor patrol security boats out there, and what we did is we provided power through the solar panels and the windmills that you saw there to their equipment, so their radios and their computers and their living spaces. We actually were able to make water. We have a solar-powered reverse osmosis unit, and it harnesses the sun to filter seawater. And we were able to provide water for 50 people out on the backside of Fort Island. So we were able to show the promise of green and renewable energy in a more operational context instead of just logistics support.
Oh, that's great.
At sea, we talked about what a great exercise this was, and what we saw was we were much busier at this RIMPAC 2014 compared to 2012. There was about 10% more events scheduled each day during the underway portion of the exercise. But the RIMPAC commander challenges commanders and his planners to be smart about how they're scheduling the ships. And what we found was even though we were 10% busier and doing 10% more events, we saved an average of 10 to 12% energy across all of our ships compared to RIMPAC 2012. So that's also a great success story.
That's incredible. So you're going to set a higher bar for 2016 then?
We'll see.
Okay.
Always strive to get better.
That's great. Now, I guess the question I forgot to ask you, and you kind of alluded to it. This obviously is a Navy initiative, the RIMPAC, but it sounds like it involves the other branches as well. How does that work?
That's a great question. And I think with any energy strategy, you can't do it by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of expertise out there. There's a lot of technology, and how do you bring it all together? Here in the state of Hawaii, we have our Clean Energy Initiative, and I think one of the key components of that is we realize in Hawaii we're not going to meet our energy goals unless we have public and private partnerships at the national, state, county, and grassroots level. So we have a similar approach in the Navy to achieving our energy strategy. A strategy is not just about technology. You need more than technology to get to your goals. One of the key elements is productive partnerships at all levels. And so that's why it was so important for us to find capable partners with the Army Corps of Engineers, Naval Facilities Engineering Command, Hawaii Electric Company. We even had a team from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, two senior scientists and leaders out here a couple weeks ago. They were looking at some projects for the Navy region here in Hawaii, but they came and spent an hour and lent some of their expertise to us. We were able to present some of our challenges, and they were able to point us in the right direction and also share some of their initiatives, some of the technology that we're developing, that they're developing, and we were able to think about how can we use that in the future, and I think there's a lot of promise there for RIMPAC 2016 and beyond.
There's more work to be done, obviously. Now, let's switch gear a little bit. I know, Lieutenant Commander, you have an MBA degree, and we were talking earlier on about applying business skill set or business aspect, business model into running the whole RIMPAC. Tell us about that.
Okay. Well, this Task Force Energy and Environment, I would liken to a corporate venture or a corporate entrepreneurship. And I personally love the story of the magic eraser. And
Okay.
I think that TFE is almost like the magic eraser. You had an entrepreneur at Procter & Gamble in Japan who sees a resin foam sponge that can be used to clean things. And then his company goes and finds a similar resin that's being used to soundproof cars. And so they bought that technology. It didn't change anything, they just changed how it was used. And now we have a magic eraser, and those two companies continued to work together. They came up with a few different product lines, and they exceeded the revenue targets by over 100%. And so they were able to more than capture the value of that technology. And so that's kind of what we're doing with TFE. We didn't come up with any new technology. We just figured out what's out there and how can it be used in a new way and in a new context. And that was a real exciting part of the project, and I think one of the successes. You don't always have to go out and buy something new. Just bring a team of talented, capable people together, see what ideas they have, talk to the customer, see what they need, and go to work.
And that's where creativity and innovation come into play. What about marketing? You also mentioned about marketing and how you have been, I guess the question is how does marketing play into the process and the application of marketing principle in this non-traditional setting like the military?
Sure. Well, there may be some people out there who would be very surprised to hear you say military and marketing in the same sentence. And I think a lot of people, when they hear the word marketing, their mind may go strictly to advertising. And certainly marketing is much more than that. I think every business student, present and past, remembers the dreaded 4 Ps in their initial marketing class: product, price, promotion, and place. And you're right, you had a good point there. The military were definitely a non-traditional setting, and so we didn't really have to worry about price too much. We weren't selling anything in TFE, and place, we didn't really have to worry about channels or inventory or distribution. The amount of windmills and solar panels that we had was a fixed quantity, but we certainly spent a lot of time thinking about what our target market was, how we could promote what we're doing, and focusing on the product, driving functionality, driving an improvement in service. And we also spent a lot of time on the promotion. We always made sure that there was someone at that camp that we saw in the video earlier ready to talk about the systems and ready to answer questions. I mean, everybody that was part of this team was really part of the sales force, and everybody helped tell the story.
That's a really interesting way of applying a business business skill set to the military. I guess let's see. You were talking renewable energy technology, and so for 2016, do you do this together with other partners, international partners?
We saw a lot of interest from our international partners in terms of did they bring any technology with them? No, but we had a number of seminars and training sessions during the import phase at the end of June before the ships got underway that a number of our partners took part in. We had great interest from Singapore and Chile and Australia as well, and I definitely see a partnership with Australia going forward as we develop some of the thought and philosophy and strategy behind this, and we'll continue to work with as many as are interested in advancing this school of thought.
That would be great. Well, you've taught us a lot about the Task Force Energy and Environment. So we'll take a break for here, and then when we come back, I guess we will talk about how RIMPAC is benefiting Hawaii, and you've talked about that a little bit already. Looking forward to 2016, what are some of the things that you may be planning to do? My two guests are Jim Nueman, Public Affairs Officer with Navy Region Hawaii, and Lieutenant Commander Robert Franklin. He is the Action Leader Officer for the Task Force Energy and Environment. Stay with us and we'll talk some more when we come back.
Okay, this is ThinkTech, and one of our favorite shows is Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. And it goes 4 to 5 every Wednesday right here from ThinkTech in Pioneer Plaza at the core of downtown Honolulu. And my co-host is Ray Starling from Hawaii Energy. Ray, do you like the show?
I love the show. It's great to see all the new people coming in with new ideas about how to save energy, get us off of fossil fuel, and that's what it's all about. So Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. See us on Wednesday afternoons at 4 o'clock.
I knew he'd say that. Thanks, Ray.
Welcome back. This is Alice Li Hagan. My two guests are Jim Nueman, a public officer with Navy Region Hawaii. He's also the first historian there. And my other guest is Lieutenant Commander Robert Franklin. He has been talking to us about the Task Force Energy and Environment with the U.S. Navy. Before we took a break, we talked about energy, environment, how we apply business model to whole military and renewable energy technology. Let's talk about this particular exercise, and I guess all the other previous exercises. And has it always been in Hawaii, RIMPAC?
Yes, it has. There's a component that's in Southern California as well, but it's based out of Hawaii. Yeah.
Okay. Why is that? Why did we choose Hawaii?
It's just because the waters around Hawaii, the space available to, when you've got this many ships operating, and just Hawaii's central location, strategic location in the Central Pacific makes it what it has always been, is, one of America's most strategic, geographically placed ports in the world. So that it's largely a geographical consideration.
Oh, I see. Well, as I said, it was really fascinating to see so many different types of ships all docked at Pearl Harbor a couple of weeks ago. But talking about the, I guess the excitement aside, I still remember when I visited the Chinese ship, everybody was lining up and they were all excited. But that aside, the economic benefits, tell us how does the whole exercise, what benefit does it bring to Hawaii?
Sure. Well, a conservative estimate is, somewhere upwards of $15 million that are coming into Hawaii because of this exercise.
Use 15, you said?
52.
Oh, 52.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
If I misspoke, I apologize. So that's a lot of money coming in because I think Rear Admiral Cordier of the Royal Canadian Navy, he was on a news broadcast recently. I think he said it best. You've got these 25,000 sailors that are coming in and they're buying products from Hawaii. food, supplies, so forth. But I think another long-range economic benefit that maybe we don't think too much about is, they come to Hawaii, the aloha spirit is here, and then they go home to their home nations and they talk story with their friends and family and generate tourism for people to come out here because they have such a wonderful experience here. So that's definitely a big economic benefit that comes from RIMPAC. But beyond the economic benefit, I always like to point out too, we've got these 25,000 personnel in Hawaii. And they're here doing environmental outreach projects and getting involved in the culture and the community of Hawaii as well, which is great. We also have programs this year with RIMPAC where they were going into the schools and getting involved in the STEM program, robotics in particular. So we can take the technology and the things that we've learned from a military vantage point, and we can inject it into the Hawaii community as well. So economic benefits, absolutely, but it goes beyond just the economic benefits.
The STEM project, is it just strictly the U.S. Navy bringing it to the schools, or are other partner nations involved, the personnel?
As far as I know, it's strictly the Navy or possibly the other service as well, but it's a U.S. project, yeah.
Okay.
And not captured in that $52 million. We did a great job talking about the sailors and all the things that they do, but it's not just the sailors that enjoy Hawaii, but the ship does too. Ships come in and they need maintenance, and they're using local businesses and mechanics to come on board and perform services and repairs on their ships. And when they're buying food for all the sailors to go out and operate at sea for 3 weeks, they're buying local. They're buying Hawaii fruits and vegetables, and they're enjoying some of the fruits of the islands.
Now, you mentioned that they are sailors, so I presume there are other branches of service, or is it really strictly 25,000 of them, they're all sailors?
No, it's from a U.S. standpoint, it's the Navy, it's the Air Force, it's the Army, it's the Marines, it's the Coast Guard, but you also have the international air components and land components. Not all of them, not all the nations are involved in every aspect, but you've got 1,200, I believe it was, personnel involved in the land component, and then over 200 aircraft. Not all of them are U.S. aircraft. So it's largely a maritime exercise because of the Pacific, because of the nature of the Pacific, but there is absolutely an air component, land component, and so forth, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I came to visit the ships, I said, oh my gosh, they were arranging shuttle buses to
NEX.
Yes, to NEX, and I saw different types of people, and they all come here, and I know they have a mission to accomplish. They're involved in the exercise, but maybe Commander Franklin, you can tell. Do you know what social aspects are involved in all these different people coming in, or all these different servicemen and women coming into Hawaii? They buy food. What other social things do they do?
Well, there's a lot of social interaction on base. There's a very good routine and schedule that gives all these folks from different countries an opportunity to interact. Jim did a great job of mentioning the different environmental outreach opportunities. Different countries will host sailors from our country and others on tours of their ships, or they may have a reception on their flight deck. Sporting events are always popular.
Okay.
Soccer and baseball matchups are certainly very common during RIMPAC as well. And then there's opportunities to go out and maybe do some tours together as well. But there's a very robust schedule during the import phase that allows everyone to work together and interact, not just in a professional but also in a social setting.
And it's pretty amazing too. When I visited the Chinese ships, I remember the personnel there. They spoke really good English. Is that the case for most of the sailors who came from all these 22 different nations? They all speak very good English then, I presume.
I can't really say that they all do, but many of them do, because English is a common language of commerce and so forth between the nations. I don't have any figures for you on. probably speak better English than I speak their language, I can tell you that. But, but there are interpreters involved as well. I mean, because the Rim of the Pacific exercise has been happening for so long, so often, these are the kind of things that the nations are prepared for.
What other organizations, I guess local organizations, are involved? In planning the exercise, or you were talking about STEM projects. So could you?
Well, I think maybe from an energy standpoint, you could talk about,
Yeah, so Hawaii Electric Company was, already mentioned that as one of our partners. And I'd also like to highlight one of the other, I think, benefits to Hawaii from Rim of the Pacific is, we've talked about military medicine a little bit, but the training that goes on for the military medical teams really benefits Hawaii, because it brings the DoD medical facilities together and makes them better able to respond in the event of a statewide mass casualty. So they drill and get certified, not just for RIMPAC, but to certify their capability to respond to a mass casualty in Hawaii if something like that were to ever happen. So we're better able to serve Hawaii from a medical standpoint because of RIMPAC.
That's great. Now, I know earlier on in the first segment of our interview, we talked about relationship and how important it is. Maybe, Mr. Producer, if you could show the rest of the images from 4 to 9. Again, I got some of these pictures from Facebook page. At the end, it's not that one from 4 to 9. Yeah, these ones. I guess at the end, it's people from all these. Yeah, can you just roll through them? Just all these different people, sailors from different countries that make the whole thing work. I think this one's from New Zealand.
That's right.
That's New
from
Zealand.
New Zealand. You mentioned feedback from different countries. Have you actually heard from servicemen and women from these different nations how they felt about coming over here to Hawaii?
Well, they look forward to it. I've seen responses from, for instance, South Korea, sailors talking about how they'd been in past exercises and they looked forward to the future exercises, and they like to share that with their fellow sailors that, this is the real world. Maritime partnerships is the real world. That's our reality here today in this world that we live in. And so, they're professionals just like we are, and they understand that to be better professionals in this field, they need to learn how to work with other nations. Because of those common interests that they have the same interests that we do, and so they understand that an exercise agreement of the Pacific is the best way to do that. If you want to learn how to learn other ways of doing things, getting lessons learned and information from how other countries do the same. They have the same objective that you do, but they might do it a little bit different way. So most of the feedback I've seen is along those lines, that they look forward to this opportunity. Coming to Hawaii is not a bad thing either, but they look forward to the opportunity to have this kind of an exercise because they recognize that this is the way that it is. This is how we are best going to be able to maintain security, freedom of the seas, freedom of the shipping lanes in the Pacific, and the Rim of the Pacific is by an exercise like this. We practice it during a time of peace. If there's a crisis, we already have these systems in line. We've got these relationships that we have built up so that we can be more effective in doing that.
So how has this exercise, how have people, I guess military folks actually been able to apply some of these exercises to real world situation? I know you mentioned that, in case of typhoon, they may be able to, then they're familiar with working together.
Right.
Can you tell us if there are actual situations where they have to?
Well, the Typhoon Haiyan just a few years ago, that was a big one around the Philippines, but it also affected China, it affected Singapore, it affected the islands around the Philippines. That was a situation that, because we begin practicing these humanitarian assistance exercises, these disaster relief exercises, that was a multi-nation response to that. It wasn't just the United States that was responding to that. And hopefully the United States has had a leadership role in training and showing how to do these things and learning ourselves, again, from these experiences. But that's a great real-world experience where it was not just the United States, it was Japan, it was the Philippines, obviously. and many other nations, Australia, that got involved in that typhoon and the response to that typhoon, and hopefully getting relief efforts going a lot quicker because we already have these relationships in place. We know each other. We've worked together before. So when it comes time to do something like that, it's a lot easier to do.
Yeah, and at this time and age, I guess it's really important that we know who we're working with.
Right.
Absolutely. And the great thing about RIMPAC exercise is it's not just humanitarian assistance and disaster recovery, it's really the full spectrum of operations. Anything that we're supposed to be able to do as a military force really gets practiced and exercised during RIMPAC. So we train ourselves, we train our partners, we train with each other, and so whether it's humanitarian assistance, disaster recovery, or anything else that we could potentially be called upon to do, RIMPAC gives us a chance to exercise that, to get better at it, and to improve our partnerships so that we can be confident that no matter what we have to do with our partners going forward, we're better trained and capable to answer the call.
Now, very quickly, 2 things that we can look forward to the 2016 exercise. Any comments on that?
Well, I think from an energy standpoint, hopefully the lessons learned from this task force, energy and environment, will be carried forward in 2016. I know there's been talk of human trafficking is a big issue in the region, and perhaps there'll be more of that element in the future RIMPAC exercises. There's talk of perhaps developing something along those lines, but then also taking these sustainability issues with energy and carrying them forward to 2016. That's a large part of what that task force was about.
Commander Franklin?
I'm looking forward to new partnerships, who we're going to partner with to advance the energy strategy. And again, like we said, the technology is just a small piece of it. I think the people and the partnerships is really exciting, and I think that's going to enable cultural change. We're going to continue to raise awareness and level of knowledge about energy, and we've got the right leaders in place. So looking forward to 2016.
That's great.
And that cohesiveness, I'm sorry, I just want to, again, this is not an exercise in a vacuum. It's something that's been going on for years. And you just build from one to the other, these partnerships, these friendships, relationships. That's really what RIMPAC is about.
That's wonderful. Well, hopefully I will have the 2 of you back in 2 years' time to talk about RIMPAC 2016. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. My guests are Jim Nueman from Navy Region Hawaii and Lieutenant Commander Robert Franklin. We've been talking about RIMPAC and its impact on Hawaii and the U.S. Thank you so much for joining us here at ThinkTech Hawaii BizEd Spotlight. Stay tuned for our next show on the New Indonesia with David Day, and see you next week.